Thanks, guys. With that, Matthew, Cameron, and go for it.
My name is Matthew Fitchett, and this is Cameron Adams. We have known each other for a long time, went to high school together, but didn't really hang out. And then I worked for a general contractor in Albany, and he was an electrician. And we ended up working together on some projects, and I asked him to do a little bit of wiring at my house, and kind of struck up a friendship. And then
we joined a bowling league.
Yep. We joined a bowling league, and kind of through that, we decided we both kind of wanted some rentals and weren't super happy with what we were doing, and maybe wanted a little bit more from our careers. So we decided we should flip a house and then quit our jobs shortly after that. And that goes back to 2013 is when we quit our jobs.
I quit my job immediately. I got hit in the leg. On the flip, I got hit in my leg with a piece of wood, and I went to my boss. I'm like, hey, I can't work right now, but when I am good, I'll come back, but then I'm going to put my 2 weeks notice in. He's like, no, you're good now. Just walk away. You're done. I'm like, oh, okay.
Shoot.
All right. See you later. So I quit immediately.
And then he kind of convinced me to quit very shortly after that. I don't think I quit until we actually found our next flip.
Yeah.
But within a couple months, probably. So I think I counted up, I think we flipped 11 properties. One of those was actually tear down, new construction for a spec.
Oh, yeah.
That has been in Albany, Lebanon, and Corvallis for the flipping. And then kind of maybe 2/3 of the way through the flipping of houses, we had set aside some money to pay some taxes. And we decided we should buy a piece of property instead. So it was a property tax foreclosure auction.
We took our tax money savings and went to a property auction and bought our first piece of land with that money.
And here's a little tip. If you then borrow money from a private individual to pay your taxes, that interest is a business expense. But if you're paying the government the interest, it's not. So always borrow privately instead of paying interest to the tax man.
I think that was 2016 or 2015. So I think we started, we bought our first flip in 2013.
Yep.
And we flipped for a few years, and we were doing like a ton of work ourselves, like almost all of it. And so we were doing like 3 houses a year, like maybe. And then we bought that property, built 2 duplexes, and then we maybe flipped like another house, and then we bought another piece of property to do what ended up being 6 duplexes and partial improvement on the street. And that was really our first like deal that was like, oh, this is like going, like this is the thing.
Yeah.
So they were all flips? They were all flips, or did you guys refi and hold it?
No, we had bought 2 houses subject to. We bought 2 houses for more than they were worth, taking over the mortgage, because we felt like this was like back in the day where it seemed like everything was going to go back up, and which was worked out really good for us later, because later when we needed money, we were able to we had renters in there paying the mortgages for, and they like broke even. One of them might have even lost money a month. But
probably did.
2 or 3 years later, all of a sudden we got 80 grand in equity. You know, tenant moves out, fixed up real quick, and then boom, now we got 80 grand and we can keep building whatever. You know.
Will you briefly like give the 1-minute explanation?
Yeah.
I know we've got some newer members, and I don't think subject twos have been as big a part of a lot of people's real estate investing mind space the last few years. Can you just
let's roll back and talk about how we learned subject to. So we don't really prepare for these things, so we'll just shoot from the cuff.
I tried to today. I asked him if we should prepare. He's like, no, it's fine.
Fire away.
Yeah.
So in the first year, we went to a couple seminars. I can remember that we went to a Fortune Builders. We actually ended up going to
like
2
the
Fortune
weekend
Builders.
ones that are like the $99 ones that they get you all excited. I'm like, that's all.
Everyone's probably heard about it on the radio a long time ago. Dean Graziosi, which we probably wouldn't recommend, although we ended up ponying up for like some coaching from that one for, I don't know, $10,000, $12,000.
Yeah.
And that's really where we learned the subject to. And we didn't like our coach. And we think we overpaid. However, we bought 2 or 3 properties subject to.
At least 3 that I can think of.
And it's been worthwhile. And so that was worthwhile. But we didn't really enjoy that. And then we also have gone to a syndication seminar that the real estate guys put on. Real Estate Guys radio show.
Real Estate Guys radio, yeah.
Yeah.
That was a great
you can look 'em
seminar.
up. That was a
Didn't
really
do
good
any
seminar.
syndication at all, but a good seminar.
Yeah. It was probably, honestly, at
Alex?
the time, it was probably a little bit above our level.
No, we like subject to. I think my impression that's just like more of a market situation. Like if real estate drops 30% and there's some people that I feel like for it to be a good deal for the seller, they kind of have to be underwater. They kind of have to not be able to sell their house, just put a sign in the yard and get 35 offers. So in 2015 and 14, when we were doing it, there was people that were still underwater. And they're like, I can't sell my house. You know, I owe 135 on it, and it's only worth 130.
I think the other side of that is they might even have a tiny bit of equity, but they have repairs that they are completely overwhelmed with the idea of, or they have a ton of stuff, and they're kind of like, I don't know what I would even do with this stuff, so that I could do these 3 repairs or a bunch of repairs. Or they're just pre-foreclosure.
Yeah,
it's not a bad strategy for pre-foreclosure
if you're not worried about them calling the note due or whatever.
So that'll, and you can talk about exactly what subject to is now.
Okay, so you buy the project subject to the underlying lien staying in place. So you basically just take their mortgage and you start paying it, but you don't assume their mortgage. So the mortgage company, it would violate their due on sale clause, but nobody ever calls the mortgages due. So there's definitely some risk involved that you have to feel comfortable with. And then insurance becomes a problem because they want the additional insured to be in the original mortgagee's name, and you want the insurance to be in your name. So there's definitely an insurance problem that we never really found a good workaround. We ended up just having two policies.
It becomes complicated. You have to stay in contact with the prior owner because escrow is actually getting mailed or emailed, or you know, some people just give us login. When it came time to taxes,
everyone gave us login.
Yeah. You would have to get that stuff.
Right.
So you had to have a certain amount of contact with them.
Right up the.
However, if they were going to go into foreclosure, their credit would be trashed for 7-ish years. And that's a pretty bad position for them. So we basically said, like, hey, we'll make the payment. We'll keep your credit intact. And then at some point we will sell. And it varied by the deal that we did. So like one of them, we actually bought it as a flip. And we said within 1 year,
I feel like that's where it makes the most sense, is if you're trying to flip a house and they need 90 grand. That's what happened is we were like, hey, we're going to pay you 85 or whatever. And they're like, well, my mortgage is 90. And we're like, we'll just take over that. And it's cheaper than getting, you know, you don't have to get private financing or whatever.
Are these like owner-occupied situations or?
When we were buying them,
I can think of Dallas was a rental.
Two of them were rentals and one of them was owner-occupied. The Willetta Street was someone lived there.
Lanier, someone lived there.
No, he was gone.
No, we inherited. Yeah,
he was gone. We got a tenant. Yeah. So
one of them we flipped immediately, and those people were maybe a little bit more concerned about how it all shook out. So there was a 1-year deal that was like in the promissory note that we wrote with them,
and we escrowed that.
Yep. So we used Santiam escrow out of Staten Sublimity.
I forgot about that.
And so everything ran through them. And then if we did not dispose of it within a year, we had already signed the deed back to them, and escrow would just hand it back to them. And some others were, if we missed 2 payments in a row, it would just go right back to them. And that's part of ensuring to them that we're not taking it to foreclosure. Like you will have a period to correct before it would go to foreclosure.
But it's been years since we even thought about subject to. I mean, that was like 2016 probably.
Yeah, but I also think when we were starting out, we had no money. And so it was actually a really good strategy for us. Now we'd probably just rather buy something.
I remember Matt told me that he couldn't quit his job because he spends more money a month than he makes. And I told him he had to quit his job because he can't afford to work.
Yeah.
Do you remember that?
Yeah.
Yeah. So we built.
I get a question.
Yes.
What kind of a legal arrangement did you have with the seller? Did you have an attorney draw this agreement?
No. We did.
You're basically looking at 2 attorneys.
That's what I was thinking.
So we would draw up a promissory note between us, and it would get recorded, and then it would go to an escrow. And we use Tycor for regular transactions, and we use Santiam for anything that's going to go a little bit longer. So it was all documented in the promissory note that was written up.
Oh, I was gonna tell a story. So we were flipping houses before we did a couple subject to deals, I believe. We'd flipped a few houses, and we would, it was easier to buy houses back then. I don't know if you guys remember, but there was more stuff on the market, and we did some direct mail stuff and had some success, and we would drive for dollars and find rundown houses that we wanted to buy. And there's this one house that was really rundown that was in a nice neighborhood that I wanted to buy, and I sent the lady some letters, never responded, knocked on her door. I'm like, hey, I want to buy your house. She's like, well, where am I going to live? I was like, okay, fair enough. I did that a couple times, and then probably the third time, I was like, hey, I want to buy your house. And she's like, no, but I got a shop I'd sell you. And I'm like, what? And she's like, well, you got a construction company, don't you, boy? I was like, yeah. She's like, do you have a shop? I was like, no. She's like, drive by, see if you like it, and then if you like it, come back. I was like, okay, well, can I get your phone number? She's like, if you like it, you come back. I was like, all right, got it. So we drove down. We saw the shop. It was 3 industrial parcels. The shop's just like boarded up with graffiti. It's 2,400 square foot shop. We're like, oh, this is perfect. There's just weeds overgrown. There's like army trailers, and there's different like diesel containers next door. We're like, oh, I love it. So I go back, and we're like, hey, like we love this thing. We want to go look at the insides. They're like, okay. They meet us there. So she said that it was her grandson that was on title, but it's her shop, and she's going to meet us there with her daughter and her son-in-law. So we met them there, and they're all like pretty handicapped. The son-in-law was okay, except for he fell off a truck and a lawnmower crushed his leg, so he could like not walk at all. And the shop is so full that you can't walk in at all.
We didn't actually know that just yet.
Yeah, they opened the doors. They couldn't open the doors. We opened the doors for them, and you could not walk in, but the roof had been leaking, so it just reeks, and there's possums and whatever, and we're like, oh, this is... But there was giant steel purlins, so we're like, okay, the structure of this thing's good. It's a decent location, 3 industrial lots. This is going to be great. So we're like, okay, but we don't have any money still. And so we're like, how about we put some money down, and you carry the rest of it for us? And they're like, well, we need the money for when my son gets out of prison, in 13 years. And we're like, oh, this will be perfect. Like, we'll get the money before 13 years from now. I'm like, okay, great. He didn't do it, by the way. And so we...
He's still in prison?
He is still in prison. We paid off this note, though. That's the punchline. So we go out to lunch, and we're like, hey, because we're kind of in between flips now. We're like, hey, like, what do we want to buy the shop for? And Matt's like, dude, we should offer him like 45 grand. I'm like, wow. And this was back when we were like, oh, if you're not embarrassed by your offer, it's too high. We were really into that, you should be embarrassed by your offer. So I go home, I take a nap, wake up, drink a Red Bull, and I start emailing this lady, like, hey, we're going to buy it. We'll give you 5 grand down. You carry the financing at 4%. This is the daughter now. And I was like, we'll pay you 30 grand. And I send it real quick. I was like, oh, wow, that was a lot lower than we talked about. And she emailed me back instantly. She said, call me, I got a question. And so I called her, and she's like, hey, like, what's up with this escrow? Like, who does escrow? And I was like, oh, like, these people. She's like, okay, sounds good. And that's how we bought our shop. Bought for 30 grand. We put 5 grand down. They carried the other 25 at 4% interest.
That's actually our best.
I honestly didn't even know we need, like, the first thing we did when we flipped our first house, Matt's like, okay, you want to go buy a dump trailer? And I was like, we need a dump trailer? Like, what? I didn't know we needed a shop or anything.
I had an 8x8 shed in my backyard, and you were living with a buddy who didn't let him have access to the garage at all, hardly. So we would just, at the end of our first flip, we just threw a bunch of stuff away. And so now we just hoard stuff until we put it in the dump trailer. So we have to throw it away. But we have, just recently we rented out the excess property. So now that's income producing for us.
We used to kind of do something every year. So like when we first bought it, we re-roofed it. Then we re-sided it. And then we built an office. And then we poured concrete. And then this last year, we scraped the 2 lots, put gravel in, and fenced it. And we're renting it to our fence guy now. And at one point, we had to pay the note off. At one point, we were trying to get a loan for something. And they're like, hey, you don't meet for the debt to income because of this note. And we're like, well, we got enough money in the bank to just pay it off. Maybe we should just pay it off. So we ended up paying it off a few years back or whatever.
I think when we kind of negotiate with them for them to carry the note, I think it's important to find out what people want to do with the money. So they originally, why do they need this money, or do they need it? So they actually just wanted to put the money in a CD for the son or grandson who was in prison getting out in 10, 13 years, whatever it was. And at the time, CDs were paying like a 0.5 point. and we didn't really want to spend any of our money, or maybe we didn't have any money. I'm not really sure.
I don't think we had money and we weren't financeable.
Yeah. So then we explained to them that, hey, if you guys carry the note, we'll pay you 4% interest, and this is how much more money you make than in a CD. And so I think it's important when you're trying to negotiate with someone to figure out what their needs and wants are. And if they have no use for money, then seller financing is a great thing. Because obviously someone who's incarcerated, they don't really need money today.
Sure. Another thing is they said, we were like, who's going to clean all this stuff out? And they're like, we are. And we're like, no, you're not. Like, there's zero chance you guys are physically able to clean all this stuff out. So another thing we said is like, you take anything you want and we'll take care of the rest. We ended up hauling off
4 40-yard dumpsters
so much stuff. Not including all the trailers and whatever was, there was a lot of
We gave
stuff.
away trailers on Craigslist and such.
So one thing with that, I think you mentioned it last month in a private conversation, but what does that allow for you guys to do as far as buying low-cost material, storage? I mean, it's helping you save money, right?
Yeah, like our flooring rep came to us and knew that we were going to do this 18-unit project and said, I have a great deal from the manufacturer. They're trying to get rid of all this flooring, and they've got 18 pallets, and it's a pallet sale only, so you have to buy pallet quantities. So we looked up the flooring. She brought down some samples. We decided on something, and it all got delivered to our shop for the 18-unit apartment complex. And we sat on that flooring for 6-ish months.
Yeah.
Something like that. And it's a LVP that we paid $259 a square foot for, that had been selling for like $385, and now LVP, because it has petroleum in it, is just continued to go up. Also with the supply chain issues, like our like a PTAC unit, which would be like a hotel type heat pump, heating and cooling unit that goes underneath a window. People had been telling us those are maybe 4 months out, 4 months lead time. So we just bought all those for the 18 unit, and they got delivered to our shop. And as we need them, we'll haul them over in our trucks or the dump trailer. And then, so that has been convenient. At one time, it was like, we knew that we were going to build a triplex. This is maybe a duplex. I can't really remember, but we knew that we were going to need a bunch of appliances, and appliances had been going up, and it was like a Labor Day sale. So we actually just got appliances and had them delivered to our shop. And it's a little bit of a pain in the butt. Then we load them in a dump trailer, but it was like, per unit was like a $2,100 savings or something from what we were going to buy. So it definitely allows you some flexibility in material stuff.
And we have so many tools. Like, I don't know what we'd do with all of our tools if we didn't have a shop.
Yeah. I mean, as you do more and you grow, you just kind of need more space.
Yeah.
What's the work you guys do?
Matt does it.
So on the 18-plex, not a whole lot. If you look back on, we have built 8 duplexes and a triplex, 9 duplexes and a triplex. And 4 of the duplexes we had framed, and that was it. And
we had someone else frame.
Yeah, I'm sorry. 4 of the duplexes we had someone else frame and side. But on the duplexes, it's fairly scalable for us to do it ourselves if we're doing 1 or 2. When we did Ash Street, which we can talk more about, we built 6 of them. So we framed and sided the first 2, and windows and doors, and then we started had foundations poured on the next 2, and we started doing finish work. So we subbed out the framing on those 2. So we just kind of rolled from 2 to 2 to 2.
So it's always been us. At one point we got 1 employee, and then we had 2 employees, and then we had 1 employee, and then I think we went back to 2, and then we had 1, and now we have none. So we've kind of had guys help. We had 1 employee for quite a while. We had Cody for years.
4.5 years probably.
Which is great if you have work, but if you don't have work, it sucks. What do you, they need to.
I think we've always felt if you're going to have employees, they have a responsibility to show up every day to put food on their table. As an employer, you also have a responsibility to have work for them. It's just not on them all the time. So we've always been tried to be conscious of that. And we probably still would have Cody, except for he went back some drugs. And 1 employee for us was pretty good.
We had 1 really good employee, yeah. His girlfriend was going to Oregon State, and so he worked for us for a few years, and then when she graduated, he left. But he was definitely the best. So
we'll go back to 2016. We bought some land at a property tax foreclosure auction in Lebanon, and we were pretty sure we could build some duplexes, but I think we actually met with the city afterwards. It was a half acre. So
Do you remember how much we paid for it?
it was in like $21,000.
Scott was there. I remember Scott being there.
Mhm.
You were there.
So we bought a half acre in Lebanon on a half or somewhat undeveloped road for $21,000, and we subdivided it and built 2 duplexes, and thought that was wonderful. And it probably was our worst rental deal we've done ultimately.
Yeah,
But
it was.
probably because we were the property managers.
Part of it was we wanted to design a just the best living environment ever. So like none of the bedrooms would be on the same wall. So like there's garages and then they kind of like spanned out. And then we did like tile floors and we did.
It was like an inefficient usage of foundation. Like it stepped in,
And
so
then they had these
bedrooms wouldn't
huge
touch.
yards, and it was So
It was also a great learning experience.
sure.
And we were able to refinance those and pull out all of the money we put in and a little bit more.
I think that was like the first like, oh, like this is a thing moment.
Yeah, we thought we wanted to build rentals for passive income. And that was the deal where we learned that we could build them, refinance out 70% on a cash out refinance, and end up putting money in our pocket, tax-free, and then have an asset with 30% equity that paid us every month a little bit. And I can't really remember. We didn't make a ton of money every month on those. We also rented them for $875 a piece. Diversified Property Management had one of those units listed for $1,550 earlier this week or last week.
We have since sold them. We like to sell things before they go up in price.
Yeah.
We like to sell medium. Yeah.
So when we were finishing that project, we had built a decent relationship with the city of Lebanon, who still is, but maybe it's shifting a little bit. Much easier to work with than Albany, which is much easier to work with than Corvallis. So we kind of went in there and we had a small question that was probably remedial. And we asked Tammy, and she said, well, what are you guys doing? And we said, well, we're finishing these 2 duplexes. And I think we like this, and we'd like to probably buy something else.
Mm-hmm.
And she actually kind of walked us through land that was available.
She literally pulled out a drawer and was like, these are all the parcels that have been approved for development deals. This parcel, that's okay. This parcel, that's actually pretty good. This parcel, that guy died last year. You might want to call his daughter. And she was just going through all this stuff. And I think we picked the dead one.
One of those was next to a parcel that was already listed, and they actually owned both of those. So we contacted them about buying the one that was unlisted. And one of the main reasons is that the listed property had a bigger water access issue. The water for that property was going to be accessed by the other street, which only had a 2-inch line in it. So if you wanted to build multiple duplexes, you had to have a hydrant, which requires a 6-inch minimum water line in city water line. So we targeted the other property, and we ended up buying that for $52,500. That was about an acre on a street that was half developed. So the other side had, the utilities were in the street, but they were on the other side, had curb, gutter, and sidewalk most of the way, not all the way.
Mm-hmm.
And so we bought the opposite side and divided it into 4 lots, which classified us for serial partitioning as opposed to a subdivision. So you can basically create 3 additional lots within a calendar year, and you're doing a serial partition, which is much, much easier to get through a municipality than a subdivision. Just very different land use requirements. So we did that, and then we decided.
And like, keep in mind, like this whole time we're like terrified, like absolutely terrified of every step along the way. At least I was.
So we had not sold the first 2 duplexes we built, so we didn't have that money. So we bought the land. We went to Udell Engineering, who we really like. They're out of Lebanon, and we're using again currently. And they helped us. And it also, I feel like just 5 years ago, you could get through the city pretty easily, pretty quick, and it's much tougher now for any city. But we ended up parceling into 4 parcels, and 3 of them were a little bit larger to accommodate 2 duplexes on each lot. So a total of 6 duplexes. And then we sold 1 lot to a woman who paid us a little bit more than we bought the whole thing for. But we did the development. And so we ended up with 6 duplexes at right at $10,000 per door of developed land. So we were about 120,000.
I'm pretty sure we started the first 2 without really knowing where all the money was going to come from.
Yes.
And I got a cold call from a banker saying, hey, and I think it's like just a whatever call. I'm like, hey, I'm blah, blah, blah at this bank and such, give me your name. Like, we're looking to do construction financing. I was like, oh, like, we definitely need that. Like, absolutely. And we went in and
we were framed up in like roofing and siding and windows. And we had no financing.
And like almost hung up on the guy. And I was like, oh, no. Yeah. Well, we're not financeable. He's like, well, you never know because, you know, it was Willamette Valley Bank and we're blah, 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 whatever. And I was like, okay, great. So we went in and had a meeting with him. Like, yeah, I would love to give you guys construction financing. That was great. And that's who's doing our 18-plex. We've worked with them ever since.
Probably had to do our taxes first.
Yeah, we're normally a little late on that. And I also remember I was really scared about all the financing. And I knew Scott at the time. I don't know if you remember this, but I asked you to come by and look at them when we just were like sheetrock the first 2. And I was like, can you come like look at them? And you're like, oh, okay, yeah. So you came look at them, you're like, yeah, it looks good. And I was like, well, I don't know, what do you think about like rents and stuff? You're like, oh, I'm sure it'll be fine. And you walked away. And that actually was a big deal for me. Like I felt so much better. Like when you just like,
Is that good advice?
yeah, it was great advice. It worked out perfectly. Yeah. You're like, yep, good enough. And I was like, oh, yeah. Do you remember that? Yeah. Yeah.
Rents are a lot higher now.
Yeah.
They are.
Yeah.
So when we actually had the first set we finished and we refinanced it with Willamette Valley Bank and we didn't like the interest rate. They couldn't figure out why we didn't buy down. And it said, we basically told them we don't like the loan at all. We don't really have any choice at this moment. And I think we were actually into the second set and had started the third set by the time we came around to refinance. So we refinanced it at not a great value and not a great interest rate. And there weren't really comps in Lebanon. And we kind of lucked out that we had a broker reach out to us and that knew that we had some stuff in Lebanon and said like, hey, do you have anything you'd like to sell? I have someone who would like to buy in Lebanon. And they were on a time clock with a 1031 exchange. And they absolutely knew that they wanted to invest locally. And we basically said, yeah, we maybe would sell the stuff we have on Birch Street. So make us an offer. And they offered us higher than we would have thought that they were worth. And that created a comparable sale to turn around and refinance the 6 duplexes that we had on Ash Street and we're finishing.
So I think we have one property that we've built that we refinanced 3 times by now.
Yeah. And the most in basically at the beginning of the year, first refinance was in November of 2021 and the last one happened I think after the first of the year. We actually don't qualify for conventional mortgages anymore because we don't show any income.
Yeah, we basically have stopped flipping houses. So the only income we have is rental income.
Which we don't really pay taxes, but if you want to get a conventional mortgage, it doesn't work out very well. So we refinanced all 6 of those duplexes on Ash Street, which are on 3 loans because it's 2 duplexes per parcel. And then another duplex we built in Lebanon with a private lender out of Florida who you don't have to meet Freddie and Fannie conventional loan standards. So at the moment, that seemed not as awesome because we were looking at 4 and 4 1/8% when other people were getting 3.5%.
That guy did it. I remember that guy. He would
like the
make
same
fun of
month.
us. Yeah.
And we had to pay a little bit more points up front, and there's penalties in the first 5 years.
There's prepayment penalties.
Prepayment penalties.
Yeah.
It's 5% the first year, and then works down over 5 years to 1% prepayment penalty. Now that loan today looks pretty dang good because you'd be spending. You looked it up today, 6 1/4 today, 7 months later or something like that. So kind of as we were finishing Ash Street, we decided we really liked doing this. It was working out well for us. New construction is a little cleaner and a little bit more fun. And so we started looking for more property. And one of the things we did, I don't know if this is actually how we bought this property, but we looked at the zoning maps for where we want to buy.
That's exactly.
And we would look at like Google Earth, Google Maps, and we would kind of overlay the zoning that we were interested in with bare parcels. And then we would figure out who owned them, and we would write them a letter. Or if a neighbor would give us a phone number, that's kind of the cat's meow. Mm-hmm. If you can talk to someone in person, which you can get to that through a letter, but it takes a little bit longer. So we found a parcel on 5th Street in Lebanon that was zoned RM. And Cameron wrote a letter, I believe.
I think so, yeah.
And then called the guy and then met with him.
Do you remember his name? I don't remember his name.
No. He was an old concrete guy in the area.
We were talking to him, and we were like, what do you want for this thing? He's like, well, I don't know. I was like, just like ballpark me. Like, what do you think you want? He's like, well, the tax assessed value is 60 grand, but I'd have to have more than that. And I was like 66? He's like, okay. I was like, okay, great. So then I was like,
he also had done, he originally wanted to build duplexes on it, but there was 2 different spots. It's, well, I don't know shapes that well, but it's like a rectangle with a triangle on the end. So it gets a little funny and it goes into railroad tracks. And there's 2 spots where city utilities run through it. So you can't build on top of those because of easements. So, and then because of the railroad tracks, ODOT Rail has jurisdiction of anything within a certain distance. So your entrance to the property had to be far enough away. So you're kind of pigeonholed to like a duplex if you wanted to do it very simply. So for 20 years, he did nothing with it.
So then I'm like, okay, cool. I'll come to your house and we'll fill out a purchase and sales agreement. Like, can I come this afternoon? He's like, yep, great. So I go to his house in the afternoon and I'm like, hey, here's the stuff, whatever. He's like, great. And then he has to have his wife come and sign it. And she's like, why are we selling it to this guy when the other guy's going to give us 100? And I'm like, oh, is this like not going to happen? And he's like, no, that's not for real. He's like, this is for real. And she's like, no, the other guy's going to give us 100. Like, why are we going to sell it for 66 when we can get 100? I'm just like, oh man, like I'm so close to getting this deal and I don't know if it's going to happen. And she eventually signed. And apparently the other guy was the neighbor. So now the neighbor walks by fucking all the time saying,
what's your language?
Sorry. Why'd you guys buy it for 66 when I was going to give him 100? I was like, I don't know. I'm sorry. Yeah. He was like, I wanted to pay him 100. I was like, yeah, we bought it for 66.
We met with him one more time on site. And I feel like we build rapport pretty quick.
I think he felt like we were super serious. Like, it's like,
yeah.
Like if you do it with us, it's going down.
Yep. And some of that, you tell them what you've done before. Like, you know, we just finished these 6 on Ash Street, bought the land, development through finished. And so they feel like you're going to follow through. We were actually discussing this yesterday or today. I don't think we've ever put anything under contract and not purchased it.
Until last month.
What was that?
That thing with the 20 whatever.
We didn't put it under contract.
We got rejected. Okay.
Yeah, we would have closed.
Fair enough. All right.
So we very much so try to do what we say we're going to do.
But also when you're buying a $100,000 lot for 66, it's not hard to follow through.
So then we hired a civil engineer. We met with the city, hired a civil engineer, and
we moved the sewer line. So in order to make it super buildable, you had to move the sewer line.
Yeah. So we rerouted.
Did you start
Shit runs downhill, bud. It's all good.
Did you meet with the city to see if this was a possibility before?
We actually did due diligence on this property while it was under contract and even before. No, not before we put it under contract.
So if it hadn't have worked out, we could have done something different with it, but that made it the most feasible for us. Yeah.
We felt very confident that you could basically put 2 duplexes on either side of the sewer line where it was. So at minimum, it was a 2 duplex
That's
lot.
what he'd wanted. That's what the original owner was trying to do,
yeah. However, a thing we learned in that due diligence is that there's no stormwater in front of the property.
Oh.
So we were going to have to go down 5th Street, which is, it's a fairly heavily trafficked street in Lebanon. So we're going to have to dig up 5th Street to put stormwater in. However, there was stormwater down Morton Street, which is just one street over, it tees into 5th Street. And there happened to be a bare lot there. So we had a brief conversation with the city and the engineer, and they said, well, yeah, I mean, if you got an easement on that property, you could just go through private dirt the whole way and then cut across Morton Street, which is like a very small neighborhood street.
It's going to be like a foot higher, which is a huge difference with all your elevations of the parking lot and the building and everything.
So then we went to the owner of that property, and I actually can't remember if we asked him for an easement first or just told him we would buy it.
I think we went in with we were going to buy it.
Yeah. So we then bought an adjacent property that the corner's touched by about 25 feet, maybe even less. And we bought that lot for
$55,000.
I thought it was 60, but again, cheap.
Maybe it was 60.
And,
no, cheap looking back. At the time, we thought we were getting
yeah, we thought we were paying quite a bit of money.
Yeah.
Um,
No, we were like, I was like, so we just bought this lot for 66. I'm like, I'm the best lot buyer ever. I'm just gonna go to this guy's house, buy this lot. It's gonna be great. And they had me through the ringer. I went there 10 times for an hour a pop, and every time like left in tears. I'm like, they're not even gonna sell it to me. But they actually always wanted to sell it. The first thing they said is like, yeah, we'll sell it. But the number just started super high, and it took forever.
So we ended up, so now we had 2 lots, and we were working on figuring out what we were doing with the 18-plex lot. And in the meantime, we decided we can build a triplex on this other lot. And that's like an outright yes approval staff decision from the city. So we ended up, while everything was being designed for the 18-plex, we built a triplex on this other lot. And at the same time, we gave ourselves an easement from the 18-plex lot. I think it's a 12-foot wide easement. And we put
Big culvert.
24-inch ADS pipe, HDPE pipe. So all of our stormwater from the 18-plex is underground. A lot of times now you'll see like ponds, retention, detention ponds in bigger developments. You can also put all of that underground in piping. But elevation becomes a little bit more of an issue there. But we ran that down the property line and across the street, and everything for that had to happen when we did the triplex. Well, I guess it didn't have to, but it made it much easier. So the civil engineer kind of took on that project as well, which required a small parking lot, but a parking lot. And so we built that while we were kind of getting the design done for the 18-plex, and that worked out pretty well. The biggest reason it worked out well is that Cameron and Brittany decided they should build a custom home, wanted to, and so they moved into the triplex and sold their house.
I like to sell the houses when they're low, so before they really took off, I sold my house.
So we got owner-occupied financing on the triplex, which so we didn't have to refinance that one.
We got owner-occupied. My wife has a job, so she can get a couple loans here and there.
In full disclosure, on Ash Street, I think Brittany co-signed on 2 of the 3 loans.
Yeah, we throw her signature around like it's nothing.
Yeah.
She doesn't even know. We're just like, hey, sign this, babe.
And while we were building, so the triplex, we finished that in September of 2019, is when that went into service. And while we were building that, there was, I'll call it a tweaker house right across the street that no one in the neighborhood enjoyed, and that went to property tax foreclosure. We watched it get torn down by the county, and they posted the signs. And so we kind of decided, well, maybe we should just buy that and build a duplex.
No, I don't think we were going to buy it. I think we were going to buy
we went for a place off like Maryland's or Charlotte Street.
Yeah, we weren't going to buy that. That one had some weird liens on it that we were like, we're not even going to buy that one. And so, but we got in a bidding war with some neighbor on some Timber Ridge property, and we quit. And then I was like, hey, what about this other one? He's like, if nobody bids, just do opening bid. I was like, oh, okay, great. So we kind of bought it like not 100% planning to buy it.
Yeah, we bought it for 37 and change. A duplex lot across the street from the triplex. And that was it was before we were done with the triplex, so it was in summer of 2019. And we had done some due diligence ahead of time, which was that there was a child support lien on it for $67,000. And I called Department of Child Services, I'm gonna call it that. And I talked to them fairly thoroughly, and they said, correct, it follows the individual, not the property, so it'll be no problem. And I thought, great. And then we bought it, and we were doing stuff, so we just kind of sat around for a little bit. And then I looked up the records, and the lien is still there. And I thought, well, this is kind of odd. Like, why wouldn't this lien have been released? So I called them again, and they said, yeah, sorry, lawyer up. And it was like, oh, God.
Shoot.
Turns into a $114,000 lot real quick. Turns out we were right, that it does disappear, and as they told me. However, they file the liens on behalf of the individuals. and their name is on it as well as the individuals. But if you want to release that lien, you have to get the signatures of the individual who is owed the money. So we hired a lawyer, and I think we paid him $1,650, a gentleman out of Corvallis who was very helpful. And he basically said, you're absolutely in the right. We just have to write a letter, and hopefully they take the letter to a lawyer, and a lawyer says, yep, sign the documents. Otherwise, you can go to court and you'll lose. And it took maybe 2 months, but that's exactly what happened. Ex-wife and 2 daughters. So the other thing is 3 people had to sign off on it. But they all hired lawyers, and the lawyers said, yep, just sign off on it. It's a done deal. And so it took a couple months, but the liens were cleared. And I actually think...
No, I don't think so. No, because we were building houses at that point. Yeah, we'd already started building houses, yeah. I made Matt build me a house.
So that was, anyway. Then it turned out that we built 3 custom homes starting in, well, we broke ground in like November of 2019. And one was for...
Maybe October.
Yeah.
No, yeah, 20, yeah.
One was for Cameron and his family. One was for our really good friend Brandon and his family. And one was for Cameron's sister. And our buddy Brandon had developed the 4 lots. He sold one to another builder. And kind of part of the deal is Cameron said, sell me a lot at this cost, and then we'll build you a house.
But I told him it'd be really nice. That's what I told him. I was like, super nice.
So then we were building those houses, which was more profitable than, it's probably more profitable, but you got to pay some taxes, I guess.
More profitable than what?
Well, than not paying yourselves to build rentals.
Oh, yeah, more profitable than not making money. Yeah. Yes, it was.
And it was actually pretty satisfying. Like I came from a custom builder background, and I love building rentals because it secures retirement. However, building some really nice houses is actually pretty satisfying.
There's a lot of times during the day where Matt's like, this contractor I follow on Instagram says blah, 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 blah with weatherproofing. Or, this contractor in Washington thinks that this product's actually not as good as that product.
To be perfectly clear, it was a whole year after you started your house that I actually got on Instagram. Okay. So that was at the very end of the project.
I was just pointing out that you're the only person that follows contractors on Instagram.
That's not true either.
That was the punchline.
So that was satisfying. Cameron got into a house for a really good deal. We made that up on the back end by charging Brandon. And your sister got a really good deal too. And we were finishing up design for the 18-plex, which we had issues with the engineer. It was not UDEL. Things were taking a long time. And then during that project, everyone knows the 3 custom homes, COVID happened. And I think it was about a week apart from the state shutting down, like saying, hey, everyone has to stay home. The bank called us and said, hey, good to go on that construction financing, boys. And we were like, oh, I don't know about that. So we just told them we weren't comfortable, that we don't have too much money into it at this point, and we don't know if tenants will have jobs, so we're going to pump the brakes. We also had these 3 custom homes going, which was a decent amount of work. And so we just held off. And then as we were finishing those houses, which was about a year and 4 months later, I think the last person moved in
February,
beginning of February of 2021. Prior to that, but we had called the bank and said, hey, let's get going again. And of course they said, well, where are your new taxes?
And you got to get a new appraisal, and you got to get a new budget going. Our second budget was hundreds of thousands of dollars more than our first budget due to material costs. But yeah, then we did it second time.
Mm-hmm. So while we started...
And then we built that duplex.
So while we started the civil work for the 18-plex, we then built, at the same time, since we were going to be over there, we built the duplex that was across the street from the triplex that was adjacent.
Yeah, we're like cancer. We start someplace and we just kind of grow out.
So we built that duplex, and almost all of that was our labor. So we're into that for a very good dollar amount. And
when it's our labor, what do we do?
Well, like our excavator doesn't have another guy, so we will run grade rod. We will pin corners. We subbed out the foundation. We subbed out all concrete. We framed it ourselves. We did windows, doors, siding.
Electrical.
Cameron's a licensed electrician.
Yeah.
So he does almost all of our electrical for our projects. When we're working for clients, we will typically sub that out because we can only do so much work. We did flooring, cabinets, countertops, trim, interior doors, blinds, landscape. No, we actually subbed out the landscape.
That was our
on
first
one.
job. We hate landscaping.
Yeah.
And
we did all the painting ourselves.
We don't do any. Yeah, we're done with painting, I think, though.
Yeah, I think so too. So that is, if you do all that labor yourself, we have been able to.
And you don't pay yourself.
And you don't pay yourself.
That's the trick.
Then when you refinance out money at the end, you're able to refinance out excess money that is then tax-free. And that's really what we enjoy. And the asset. So that is.
Did you say flooring? Because I was on my hands and knees for a long time.
Yeah, I did say flooring.
Yeah. Okay.
So then the 18-plex. We're currently under construction. We turn over to the property manager the first 6-unit building on October 1st. They placed an ad today, and probably about a month for the next 12 units to turn over to them. We have construction.
Two buildings then?
Yeah, 2 buildings,
Yep.
1 6-unit building. So they're 3-story walk-ups. So
Kind of like every apartment you've
one's
seen in
2
the
wides
Nicollet Valley.
and 3 tall, so it's 6, and then the other is 4, so 12.
And really the reason it's done like that is because of the utilities that ran
Because
through.
there's a sewer line right through the
So
middle.
we jogged a sewer line to come through an easement that we put in between the 2 buildings. And then the big building stops with a foot to spare before the easement for water, high pressure gas,
Every utility in Lebanon
Yeah.
runs through the.
and communication.
Yeah. Yep.
Which was a big holdup for the guy who owned it prior.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, we actually had to have the city come out and pothole the water line because that was the closest one to figure out exactly where it was to make sure that we weren't going to build over the top of it.
they come out and in Lebanon, they water witch to find their own water lines. And we were like, he marked it where it was not in a good location for us at all. In fact, I think it was under the building.
Yeah.
And they'll actually.
No, I remember what happened. We told them we were going to dig it up, and they're like, "Whoa, whoa, 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 whoa! We'll bring a vac truck out and we'll dig it up."
This is after they located. And we said that doesn't work for us. All your maps show it like 10 feet over, and they're like, "No, we witched it. It's right there." And we said, "Well, we're at a little impasse. So what do we do?" And they're like, "Well, you kind of gotta dig it up." And we told them a story about Cameron on a piece of equipment, said we would do it.
The story was, we bought this house, tore it down, built a new house, getting ready to sell it. This was back when we were flipping houses, like doing landscaping. Like we're putting it on the market in like a week, and I've got this tractor, and I'm doing pretty good. I'm feeling pretty good about it. And then I turned around for some reason, as I'm like spreading dirt, and just smoked the front of the house with a bucket. Broke a window, broke siding, broke trim. So
we told them that story, and then they brought a vac truck out the next day and potholed until they found it. And I also believe firmly, Lebanon, you can do that. If you were in Corvallis or Albany, they'd tell you to just get. And we were actually right. The water was like 12 feet over. It was 10 feet over, which it was a 20-foot easement, so barely cleared. So that project is construction financed. It rolls into perm financing at C of O's for everything. It was underwritten through Freddie and Fannie underwriting, which at the time when the construction financing was written was the best financing. Now it is not. It has kind of followed the bond market and a little more traditional financing rates. And credit unions are lower. So we probably will look at refinancing it when it's done for a better rate than what we would get. Because obviously the takeout financing rate is not, well, the construction financing rate's not locked either. But
so with that, when you do the construction to perm, did you have this set or a fixed rate that you knew was going to happen once you went to perm?
no, it was prime plus something. And at the time, he said the floor was going to be 4.5%. So it's whatever plus whatever, and it's at like whatever. He's like, so you're definitely gonna be at 4.5%. It probably won't go over 4.5% because you have this much room to go before it even gets to 4.5%. And so now we're at like 6 or something. But when he did that, he was like, you guys are gonna want to refinance anyway. So we're gonna do no prepayment penalties, and you guys are gonna have 3 years to come up with some different financing when it rolls. So we kind of set it up to refinance anyway.
Everything else we'd construction finance, we had not intended to, we did not want to refinance with him at the end because their rates weren't as favorable.
Yeah.
So he felt very confident that we would seek other financing regardless. So he wrote the note so that we had less time to do so as opposed to like a 10-year balloon, but there were no prepayment penalties.
And that's generally better for you too, to be able to pull more tax-free money.
I don't know if we're pulling any money out of this one.
So I think that market is shifting a little bit. Like that has been our bread and butter. You're having to buy land for quite a bit more. Ooh. All costs are up, and you might see values soften. Yeah, they've maybe peaked a little bit.
I think
for a
the
while.
delta between what it costs to build and what things worth is getting
We also,
smaller.
when we're building duplexes, we were doing a bunch of labor ourselves. Much less labor on an 18 unit because it's just unsustainable for 2 people to do all that labor.
Can you go through some of the things on the 18-plex that you did and didn't do, or was that your list before?
Yeah, no, we can do that. We'll do that right now.
Yeah.
I did all the electrical by myself. People said I couldn't do it. I did it. Guys I used to work with, they're like, oh, you can't do it. I'm like, screw you. So I did all that. Matt has done the large bulk of the general contracting. So he sends 36 emails a day and all that kind of stuff. Matt installed decks today.
I'm doing a bunch of random stuff.
We installed staircases, which was fun. So the welder welds you up the stairs, and then you buy these concrete treads that are 140 pounds, and then the framers won't install them. So they did let us borrow their gray doll, and I didn't tell them about the house I hit. So we installed these runners, and then you have to carry these 130, 140 pound treads and like set them down. And then the next thing is just down because like you're going like this.
Obviously we were harnessed for OSHA standards, all that.
Yeah, I don't. Yeah, okay. And so we did that. What else did we do? I did all the grade rod excavating type stuff.
So I think one thing we've found is that the civil work is really expensive. So I don't know how we'll do it going forward, but on the 18-plex, we did all the stormwater ourselves with I'm going to call him our regular excavator. He's a highly competent excavator on a piece of equipment, but he's not normally doing 24-inch HDPE pipe for engineered stormwater systems. He's running your rain drain from a single-family house to the street. We feel pretty confident in what we're doing, and he said, as long as you guys are willing to do it with me, and you guys have boots on the ground, we'll do whatever you want.
He's basically, tell me exactly where to dig, and I'll dig. And so then
we laid all that stuff out. We did all the storm. Actually, honestly, Cameron did most of that because I was finishing the duplex across the street.
He did. Our excavator has a buddy who has a big excavation company, and we borrowed some $20,000 laser that tells you exactly the grade in the whole parking lot. And then he like gave it to me, and he's like, we're gonna use it in like 2 weeks. You gotta figure out how to like upload the CAD file to it. So I'm like trying to get these things on the computer and stuff, and we didn't use that. We couldn't figure out how to use it. So
it uses all like GPS.
I was like, I think it's like, yeah,
so
it's like here.
You put a main hub somewhere on the property, and you upload your CAD files into the computer program, and then you basically plug that into your equipment, and you just kind of do it all. However, we can't even make a PowerPoint presentation.
I can't even figure out the difference between inches and point feet, so I had to buy an engineer's tape measure. And like the whole time, like my tape measure was like, okay, that's 1.3, and then I get my calculator. I was like, okay, here we are. But we got it.
So all of the building excavation, all the parking lot excavation, all the storm water, and probably a couple other random things we did.
You installed P-Tech sleeves and P-Tech.
Yeah, I'm just covering the civil side.
Oh, sorry.
And then like we will do all the prep for the concrete with our excavator. Like a civil guy, they're going to include the asphalt, but they're not going to do it themselves. They're going to hire an asphalt company, and they're going to mark it up 20%, or I don't know, maybe more. So we just hire the asphalt company ourselves. So we kind of general contract the civil work, and we have a good relationship with the civil contractor. We said, do all the water, which is like, doing a hot tap on a 10-inch water line that is the city's property. They moved the storm and put in new manholes. They ran all the power. We have fire sprinklers in the units. So you have to set a hydrant and a large control box, like 6 foot by 10 foot, 6 foot deep. And then they ran ductile iron pipes to the building. So we try to do what we can or manage what we can, and we're very happy to not do what is above our pay grade, or just not our specialty. So we did an assortment of different things. We did the venting. We did installed the PTAC units, like the ductless heat pumps that go underneath the windows. And it's just, like the PTAC units, you can buy them for $1,200 with all the parts online. Actually, we didn't even buy it online. We bought it from Keller Supply. And it does not take long to install. And an HVAC company is going to charge you $2,200 to $2,400. So there's just easy cost savings there. So we did an assortment of things. The biggest labor standpoint is honestly Cameron doing the electrical. And then I do the majority of the general contracting on a project like this.
What's the unit mix of the 18 Plex?
It's a great question. There's two bedroom, 2 bathroom units. There's 9 of one and 6 of another. And then there's 3 1 bedroom, 1 bathroom units, which we're going to hire a property manager for this thing. It's the first time we're going to do that, which we're super excited about. And they told us that the 1-1s are going to rent first for like, how much was it? 13?
I think they
stupid amount.
Just down the street, they rent for $1,400. We're listing ours at $1,375, and they're 120 square feet bigger than the others.
And I'm like, all right, okay, whatever.
But they said they just go immediately.
Yeah. Luckily, we only built 3 of them.
The 1-1s are the most popular in Lebanon right now.
Yeah. Apparently. Yeah. We actually built, so the 9 2-2s are, when we were designing it, we thought they were going to be like the best units, but they actually aren't even that great. The other 6 are just as good. So we're going to rent everything for the same price.
I'll disclose why Cameron thinks they're better.
Tell me.
It's because they were much easier to wire.
No,
That's what you told me the other day.
the 6 2-2s were way easier to wear. The first 9 were harder.
Correct. And that's why you think the 6 are now better. You thought the 9 were going to be the best, and now he kind of thinks those 6. They were much
too
less
hard
labor
to do the wiring on. I mean, I was shaving hours off once I got to the 6.
So we're close to being done with the 18 Plex. And maybe like 2 months ago.
Are we close to being done with this speech?
Maybe.
Okay.
I'll just say that we secured our next property. So maybe a couple months ago we decided, well, we should probably start looking for a next deal. So about a month ago we bought 1.13 acres in Albany on Geary Street.
It's like a flag lot type deal, so it's like behind somebody's house.
And
zoned RM?
Yep.
Zoned RM, yeah.
And it was not on market. A realtor brought it to us. I kind of got the impression that they wanted to be partitioned, and they wanted to keep a shop that was on it. And so they didn't want to necessarily go to market, because everyone would say like, no, we want the whole thing. It's RM. You don't get to keep it. We said, yeah, it's fine. We'll partition it. Let them keep that.
It was an estate, and some of the family members wanted the shop. Some of them weren't so keen on it. And so we got into it thinking we weren't getting the shop, and then long story short, we're getting a shop now. Because
of some zoning stuff, you can't have an accessory building. It has to be an accessory to a residence. And then with the new, when the development code in Albany was changed with House Bill 2021, or 2001, which made middle housing kind of an outright allowance on single family lots. You now cannot build a single family in RM zoning. So they were actually gonna have to take a shop that was 36 by 42 and convert it to a duplex. And they said they would bring in their share of the utilities. So it just didn't work out. So we ended up, we gave them about 2/3 of the money, and they're carrying the note for 9 months. And that's because they're charging us, they're charging us interest, but we're charging them equal amount of rent as for interest. So it's a wash for 9 months, and they don't have to get their shit out immediately.
Because you cussed.
I feel like
so originally they were going to keep the shop. So they were going to do seller finance in the shop, and then once it got all divided up, then they were going to buy it back from us. But so now we are going to end up buying it for that price, which is more than we normally buy shops for.
So what's the plan with that property? Are you dividing it up?
I think we're going to go, I think we're going to do some 3-2s, like townhome style.
3 2.5s.
3 2.5s, and then 2
2.5s.
2.5s. And we're hoping for 14 units, but we're probably more like 12. we haven't.
And again, are you doing your own construction and holding, or are you
Yeah.
planning to sell these? Or
Yeah.
No, I think our plan is to hold everything. We always want to, you can always sell, but I think our plan's to hold.
Yeah. Worst case scenario, my wife can work 5 days a week. If we need more money.
7.
7. Yeah. What's weekend stuff? Scott?
So you blend self-performing with stuff that you can do yourself. And what is the stuff that you self-perform? You have to believe you have a certain level of competence, but what's the stuff that you self-perform that you think you saved the most on?
Ooh, we saved.
Oh, we don't really do the numbers.
Yeah.
Did you get a bid first?
So no, we did get some bids, but like in the perfect world, we just have the people we use and we just call them when we're ready. We don't want to spend a ton of time getting a ton of bids.
Who's your electrician and how long have you had him?
I can't tell you who he is because he's too busy doing my stuff.
How long have you had him?
5 years.
Oh, really? I thought it was longer.
But if he's available when he's done.
I'm free too, which is a good price. So we save good money on electrical. Matt, I feel like Matt likes framing. I feel like Matt's a good framer and he kind of likes it.
I do enjoy it.
Matt's a really good finish carpenter, like really good, like way better than me. I don't know.
On our smaller stuff,
dude, I know.
I mean, we've definitely looked at when we were doing the duplexes on Ash Street. We were guessing a little bit at the exact number of hours that we were going to put in to frame the first units. Once we got bids on the second units, I can go back and say, hey, we got paid $55 an hour approximately to frame these units. Like, is that worth it to us? On the first 2 duplexes, it was worth it because we literally had nothing else to do in that moment. But once we moved on to doing finish work in those first 2, it was worthwhile for us to sub out the framing. And to be honest, I enjoy framing. Cameron does not want to frame. And
I never thought that I was supposed to learn how. Yeah. So like we framed the first one, I wasn't really paying attention, and then we framed the next duplex, and I wasn't really paying attention. 4 later, he's like, "How do you not know this?" I was like, "Well, I wasn't really paying attention. I didn't think we were gonna have to keep doing this."
So I don't really care what I'm doing, but he would have rather moved to. Well, actually, he moved to like wiring the first 2 duplexes. So then it was like, am I going to frame the next 2 duplexes with at that time Cody, or are we going to start laying floors, cabinets, painting, all these other things?
We used to install cabinets. I think the answer to your question is flooring. They charge like $225 for laying the LVP, and you can just knock out
or more,
like 500, 700 square feet a day.
The site development. You guys
yeah.
Site development.
So
yeah, you probably save. Yeah.
You're actually where we learned some of that civil guys are thieves.
Yeah.
Years ago, you told us like, oh, that's a ripoff. It's one of the reasons Spencer does all that stuff with Jay. That's when it was him and Jay.
Yeah.
So that stuck with us. When it comes to site development, we're not comfortable, nor is Blair, tapping live water lines. The city is very concerned if you chlorinate it properly. The city of Lebanon will not let us touch their water lines because we cannot prove experience with it. BRX did our civil on the 18-plex on North 5th Street. And they're a certified contractor for the city of Lebanon. So they do the hot taps. The city won't really let us touch their sewer lines because we actually don't have experience with that. So that has been some of it. It's, do we have the time? If we have nothing else going on, then we'll kind of do whatever because then we're not shelling money out for it, which is not an incredible growth mindset.
Do you get the impression that civil work gets more expensive and then it gets potentially cheaper, and sometimes then it gets more expensive?
Yeah. So the fact that you guys don't have any employees, you can blend self-performing, and you can balance the work depending on your own workload, right? And then you have the opportunity to be nimble and quick.
Yeah.
Which is good.
I don't want to pay a civil company to move dirt and rock because any qualified or reasonably decent excavator can do that. However, the city sewer, the city water, dropping in power vaults is probably not crazy complicated. We just haven't done it before. So we're not super interested in getting involved in a lot of that stuff. So it's a mix of our time, if we have the available time to do stuff, and our comfort level and Blair's. That's our excavator.
Any other questions? What is a bookkeeping?
Oh, stop, Alex.
Yeah, I feel like that was.
Acuity LLC.
Sorry, does anybody have any softball questions?
It just seems like you guys have a lot of stuff going on. It is generating a lot of transactions. So I'm just curious how you handle that.
I do, like if we're going to work for someone else, I do the billing. And I pay 95% of our bills probably.
Yeah.
I've written 1,500 checks and Cameron's written, you're on your second checkbook.
I don't know where it's at, but yeah.
So, but to be perfectly honest, a lot of the bookkeeping happens up here. And then at the end of the year, I put everything together. And when I say the end of the year, I mean about 8 months, 9 months after that. I take everything to our accountant and they create the books.
But when
and
you're
then
doing,
they file our taxes.
when you do, like the 18-plex is one job. So that's just like, that's one job.
We've basically done nothing
You know.
else since the 18-plex started.
Yeah. So like when we're doing books, it's like kind of by job. So when you do 3 jobs a year, it's just like, what, you know, where
It's very
at.
simple.
Yeah.
The one thing I think like I don't like is, I love bank financing because it's cheaper than private financing or hard money. But the draws, you know, it's a little more paperwork.
Mm-hmm.
I don't love that, but if they want to loan me money at 4 points less than someone else, then I'll take it. Loan us money. Yeah.
Jeremy?
So you guys said that you are just now using property management.
Yeah. So he came out today for like haven't even got our first tenant with property manager. Yeah.
So before then, you guys were just managing.
And we actually will continue to manage the 17 units that we have until we have utilized this property manager for 6 months to a year. Because I think it's going to go just fine, but I really don't know.
So
they changed their contract that what would happen is, at least from talking to Greg, people would hire them to fill up their apartment building and then they 2 months later sell it. Right? So I think they changed their contract that you have to be
we saw that change.
for a year. Or
2 years.
You agree to pay them fair market value, full occupancy of their management fee for 2 years.
We were like, oh, that's not right. Like we like emailed them like, hey, this doesn't seem right.
It seems there's no performance guarantees whatsoever from them.
Yeah.
Which I get. You don't know what the market's going to do. You don't know if tenants like what we built. But it felt pretty one-sided, and we asked some questions, and they said, "Yep, that's what it is."
So we went
basically. If you want to find someone else, great. We do know Greg and Matt and Stuart, not really well, the Consors. But Jason Miller has been the president of Oregon Rental Housing Association and Lynn Benton. And we've heard him speak many times and really like what Jason has to say. So we feel very comfortable with him. I do know that they said 4 of the 5 apartments that they have begun to manage and fill up that then sell, 4 of the 5 of them, they're still the property manager for. So they did sell. If you were to sell it and they retain us as property manager, then you don't have to pay us because we really just want the income, the residual income, just like everyone wants.
So I will say though, you were kind of getting at doing all our own property management for the other ones though.
Yeah, just like how you guys.
So
how you guys like it and
Sure.
are you guys happy?
My impression is when you have brand new units, maybe a little bit easier. Like you maybe get a pretty decent quality tenant, and we've been able to fill a ton of units via email. So like we got to the point where when someone's like, "Hey, this 30-day notice," we blast out to all our tenants, "Hey, such and such is coming available. Do you know anybody?" And then even last summer, we had a few units come available, and one of the girls is like, "Yeah, let me put it on the Western Oregon Facebook group to see if any other students are looking for
the med school."
Next day, we have like 6 applications for 4 units, of medical students. Yeah. I think we just lucked into that one. But
I felt like we had pretty good tenants, and some of that is if you have newer units, you often have a little bit better tenants.
I did feel pretty good though, because that girl that did that for us, like a week before, she was like, "Oh, my light's like kind of flickering." I'm like, "All right, like I'll go change it out." So I go, I'm like, "This light flickers?" She's like, "Yeah, it flickers." I'm like, "Are you sure?" She's like, "Yeah, like late at night, there was one time I definitely think it flickered." And I was like, "Okay, whatever." So and it was a built-in LED. So I like changed out the light for her. I was like, have a great whatever. And I tell Matt, I'm like, "It's stupid. Like I shouldn't have done it," or it didn't matter or whatever. But then 2 weeks later, or a week later, she's doing us a favor. So it's like,
she's the one who first posted it, and so our last 3 units, we've had 3 units this summer that have come available, and I haven't advertised them. She took my original email that I sent out to a group of tenants. There's a couple tenants that I don't send that email to because they're maybe the tenants I maybe wouldn't want to repeat tenancy with them. They're not necessarily bad, but it's like maybe a little more troublesome. And she posted it to their group, and then she started like asking me questions, and I started answering them, and then she was literally corresponding with future med school students, giving them my answers. And then I was like, are you just regurgitating this to someone else? She was like, yeah. And I was like, oh, give them my email. Just give them my email. But so we've given her a $50 Starbucks gift card each time. And that has worked out well for us. So we self-manage, not too much work, because we don't have a ton of maintenance issues because everything's been built in the last. Ash Street is 2018 certificate of occupancies and later.
So you haven't bought a ton of older homes and fixed them?
No, we had bought 2 homes that we had as rentals, and they were subject to, and then we eventually sold them because we like to sell things before they go up in price. That one of them was a little bit. One of them actually, the tenant moved out and like was whatever. We fixed it up, and then the city's like, "Hey, like, do you remember what happened with that one? He was like trying to condemn it or something."
They basically complained that there was mold in the house, and we kind of said, "Well, First of all, I don't think there is. Second of all, no one ever told us. Like, we'd be happy to work on remediation if anyone had ever let us know." But a week after they moved out, they sent a scathing letter to the city.
Yeah.
So
it was weird.
But they were out.
Yeah. The city came by and they're like, "Oh," but everything was like clean.
Everything had moved out, and we started to rehab, and we pulled the permit. And
yeah, and they were trying to condemn the house or something. They were like really upset with us.
Yeah.
Huh.
But we have decided we don't really want 40-year-old rentals.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Especially when you're building everything new.
Yeah. But I mean, if at some point we can't find land and the market conditions say, hey, you can buy some older houses, have them for rentals for a couple of years and then sell them, that's great. But I mean, the subject to allowed us to go in with, I think one of them we put $10,000 down, one of them we gave them $10,000, one of them $5,000, and one of them we didn't give them any amount of money.
Mm-hmm.
So someone else paid the mortgage, we were no money out, and then you held it long enough, you were in long-term capital gains. And we were at a period when the market was appreciating. So those worked out pretty well.
Cool. Self-funding acquisitions? Yeah. Yeah. We've kind of just always, like, the first land was obviously the tax money that we saved. And then it kind of got to the point where like we would buy like as much land as we had money for, kind of. I don't think we
got used to not paying ourselves and living frugally. And so we would basically just take our profits and buy land.
I think when we bought the Morton Street lot, the triplex lot, we borrowed money from someone for that. I don't think we had money for that. No, we had money for that?
No, we had money for that. However, we have lines of credit with the bank. They're not huge. So we'll use our money to buy land, and then if you have to operate off some lines of credit, that's fine. We have HELOCs. We've learned that at one point we thought you had to have money, which would be great. You have to have access to money. Quick access to money is important. So HELOCs on your primary residence is great.
We've always done HELOCs.
Yep. And it's not just us. Cameron's mother has a HELOC on her house, and we'll pay her a spread. My parents have a HELOC on their house. We'll pay them a spread. They trust us, so why not? When we started, we borrowed money, first deal from my parents. And then as we finished that, we walked.
That was HELOC money too.
It was life insurance money.
Oh,
whole life insurance policy. As we finished that, we walked through an investor who basically just, very wealthy man, just wanted to invest in Albany that I had a relationship with, building for him through the company that I used to work for. He funded a couple deals. Some people, well, maybe not appropriate to say her name, but someone we met in WOW, Windows of Wealth Real Estate Investment Club, which was prior to this, she funded 2 of our flips. She had some money in the bank that was from a sale of a technology company, software company, and she wasn't exactly sure what she was doing
brown
with
hair,
it.
green eye. No, I'm just kidding.
And so she funded 2 flips in Corvallis that we did. So all that was relationship based. And now, as long as we have money to buy land, we feel very confident the bank will just lend us money for projects.
Yeah, because another thing is like they're looking at your balance sheet. So like in the beginning is like, well, not looking, but the more stuff you get, the more stuff you have, and then pretty soon they're like, oh yeah, sounds good.
The commercial lending is so like we were trying to refinance some duplexes, and we didn't qualify for a single loan at $445,000. But Willamette Valley Bank loaned us $2.37 million to do the 18-plex, and it's because one's a commercial loan and one's strictly debt to income based. Now the commercial loan, they're looking at your net worth. So you typically have to have a net worth equal to loan amounts to make them feel comfortable. So as you build a portfolio, you can then get bigger loans by nature of your net worth.
So for the lines of credit that you guys had, those were seconds on your primary residence?
Yeah, like as we've like when I got my new house, the first thing I got is got a new line of credit on it, you know.
And what would that bank or whoever you worked with, what would they have let the loan to value?
I think we're like 80.
So Umpqua, they actually still have a program where Cameron and I were never interested in a HELOC that we had to pay closing costs on, because in 2008, there was a little bit of like, hey, we're calling it due. There was a lot of, hey, you have a $100,000 HELOC, you borrowed 12 grand, we're taking away your access to the other 88,000. So I'm not interested in paying closing costs for then someone to rip away the access to the money. So Umpqua had a deal where they would go 80% LTV, no closing costs, and it was an in-house appraisal, which is a software program that they have. It's pretty close to Zillow. So if you want to try and figure out what you can get, you could basically go to Zillow and look at it. And it was...
I think US Bank will go higher. I think they'll do 90.
Key Bank and US Bank.
Max does 90%, and they do owner-occupied multifamily too. So if you're
Yep.
owner-occupied,
Gotcha.
It has to be owner-occupied to get these good HELOCs.
That was the, yeah. But there's, yeah.
And so probably maps, they're going to require an appraisal and closing costs at 90%. And I know that Key Bank and US Bank did the same thing. Actually, Brian Martin at Mortgage Express told us one time, he buys a house and he immediately goes to, I think it was Key Bank, and they'll do 100%.
Yeah.
But he said, I have this, like the second I close, I turn around and I go to them, and I have an appraisal in hand that's current dates.
And that was a couple
So
years ago.
I was never paying for a second appraisal.
Yeah, he did tell
And he just said, like, I just put all this money down. I don't need it back in my pocket, but I want access to it.
Mhm.
So we've gotten much better as time gone on, is understanding access to money, a little bit of the financials, other than like keeping books.
And it's always important to get the loans when you don't need them, because when you need them, it's too late.
Yeah.
Questions? This is awesome, guys. Thank you so much for coming.
Actually, I want to say one more thing. There have been people in here who have say like, hey, I want to do my first flip, like pretty new. Private money, people you have relationships with is important. When we first did this, I was basically losing money at my job. And I had a house that I had not quite refinanced, that I had remodeled, but I had literally no money. And Cameron had a house, but also had very, very little money.
I was like mortgage poor. I had a 6% first and an 8% second, because it was a screaming interest rate when I got the loan in 2007, which is a good time to buy a house if you guys remember. So yeah.
So it's very possible. It takes a lot of work, and you have to be frugal in a bunch of different aspects. But if you find a good deal, there is money if you have a relationship with someone, most likely. Because we never went the hard money route. Not really interested in 3 points and 12 to 15%.
Mm-hmm. And then you just have to like overcome the fear of like whatever you're doing.
Yeah. We talked about some of those seminars, which in a lot of ways are super corny. However, they got us excited about what we were doing. Like the weekend ones that were, I think they were $200 for 2.5 days. They gave you a ton of little tidbits of information that were strategies that then we would turn around and look into much further ourselves. And they were kind of obnoxiously rah. And they wanted you to turn around and buy a $25,000 mentorship program. But the Fortune Builders one, we went back to it a year and a half later because we felt like we needed to be a little bit more reinvigorated. Now, we hadn't found bigger pockets at that time. Now we would probably, if we needed some newer strategies, we might look to bigger pockets. There's way more podcasts out there that are wonderful.
So much more.
There's so much more out there. But honestly, the seminars were a very good thing for us.
Great.
That's all.
Oh, she wants to do it.
Okay.